lot.
Okay, we are streaming to YouTube and ready when you are, Mayor McClure.
I'll call this work session to order. Seward City Council, it's Monday, October 13th. It's 5:30 and we're having a work session concerning things about the electric department. And so I'm going to turn it over to administration and we'll get started.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm going to invite Brian Hickey and Taylor Crocker up to the presenters table, and we have a fun presentation to walk through about a few different topics that have come up recently in electric utility. I think it's going to show up there in a second. Yeah. And then for those following along at home, the presentation will be posted to Legislative History following tonight.
Okay.
Great.
Is that on?
I don't know.
We'll never know
Does it
until you
need to be
speak. It should be.
Brian, go ahead and
It's on the top, just click it
flip that
forward.
switch up.
Oh, there it is.
There we go.
Nice. There we go.
All
right.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that we put a little slide pack together to kind of walk us through kind of an update on where we're going with the town halls, and we've got a little bit of information on the AMIs. If anyone's been following Facebook lately, they're pretty hot right now, and so I wanted to give some good data on those, and then also talk about some changes to the infrastructure, kind of our proposals. So we wanted to start with an update from the town hall and the recent survey. So we had 422 respondents to this survey that we put out through Hayes Research. And the first slide is, do you currently live inside Seward city limits? And you can see that 47.71% were inside of town, and then 51.71% were out of town. And then this one's good because it's how important is local control of Seward's electric utility to you? So 42% said it was very important, and then the 31.4% said somewhat important, and then there's some people that aren't sure, about 11%, and then 15.5% said it's not important. When it comes to the electric utility in Seward, what is the most important to you? And ensuring reliable energy in the future is the largest percentage, followed by incorporating renewable energy in the future, and then having an open, transparent process, and then retaining local control over Seward's energy. And then this one was about kind of, we've heard some mixed reviews on the last sale. And so we asked, did you feel informed about the past discussions or votes regarding the sale of the electric utility? So 41.43% said no, and then 36.57% said somewhat, and then 16.86% said yes, and then there was 4.57% that were unsure. So there's a lot of people didn't feel like they were in the loop on that one, which is why we're doing all this now with the town halls and the surveys and the focus groups to make sure that whatever happens in the future, everyone can say that they were informed about it, and we're being transparent. And then so one was a good one. So agree or disagree, I believe all ratepayers inside and outside city limits should have a voice in the utility decisions. And so it was 83% agreed, and then there was 10% that disagreed, and 6% were neutral. And so this is kind of an interesting one as well. So which of the following are your top two concerns about the utility's future? So the rising electric rates were number one, followed by reliability of power. And I think pretty much wherever I've worked, it's always kind of been the same way. So I like to tell people, when I was down in North Dakota, our residential rates were 7 cents a kilowatt hour, and I still had people coming in and complaining that their rates are too high. So that's like a goal that's never attainable in this industry, to finally have everyone satisfied with the rates. But then we had representation on decision-making, lack of transparency, losing local control, and then there was a few that responded none of the above. So this one was, would you support a locally owned electric cooperative or co-op that gives all ratepayers, those that live in and outside city limits, a vote in decisions? So the majority of people said yes. There's some people that are unsure, and 4% do not want the people outside of city limits having a say in the electric utility. So basically, the last town hall, we focused on bringing in CEOs from other small co-ops, and we just wanted to kind of let the community know what that would look like. Our next town hall is going to focus on hopefully the CEOs from the existing co-ops on the rail belt, so the town can hear about what it would look like to sell to another co-op. We'll try to do another town hall with some other municipalities, just so everyone can get, a good idea of what it's like to just stay a municipality and keep running the business the way it's always been run. And then maybe we'll have one that's kind of a mixture of all of the above. But I really enjoyed the people that showed up at this town hall. I think there were some good discussions that were had during the town hall and then afterwards, just networking and stuff. And it was just really nice to see the community, step up and be involved with that. And the one thing that maybe we didn't mention, but it went out today, there were some emails that people in the community got about focus groups, and that stemmed from the town hall. So Hayes Research will be reaching out to community members, both inside and outside of town, and putting these small focus groups together where they sit down and can discuss, what everyone's looking for in the electric utility and kind of what their concerns are, and then they'll bring that information back to us so we have a better idea of where the community sits. So we did put a post out on Facebook today because there were some questions if that was like junk mail or a phishing attempt, but it was indeed a real email from Hayes Research that went out. So if anyone's listening, it's real, so please take us up on that because we want to hear from you. And it's kind of part of the transparent process that we're trying to put together.
Yeah, and our thinking is to have the next town hall maybe the first week in December, and then one shortly after the first of the year, and then one maybe late March for the final one. And then that gives us, then we'll kind of bring all that together, tie it up in a knot, and bring it back to you all, and then have some discussions about what the path forward might look like in the second quarter of next year, maybe early third quarter.
Do we want to pause it all for questions, or?
Yeah, if you're.
We're going to open up at the end for questions too, but if anyone has questions about the town hall or any of our processes.
As always, Hayes Group, are we paying for that as a city, or?
Yes.
I don't recall that being discussed.
So it's a contract that's underneath the margin that we would usually bring to council, so it fell within our budget.
Oh.
So we were just utilizing it for public engagement.
And what's the intent of this survey? I mean, I can guess,
Mm-hmm.
but can you just clarify what?
The intent of the survey or the focus?
Sorry, not
groups?
the survey, the focus groups.
Yeah, the
Hayes-
focus groups are to kind of hone in on some of the questions here and get more in-depth feedback about why people feel the way they feel. So they'll have selected folks out of the category who need more information. There was quite a few folks who said, we need more information, we don't really know what to do. The question is, what information do you need? And that's sort of a traditional way to do that, is to bring some of those representatives. We won't know who they are, but Hayes will. And they'll bring them together and kind of try to drill a little deeper to give us better information.
Okay.
So this is all, from our perspective, trying to dot every I, cross every T on an open and transparent process, which is what a lot of the folks said they felt they didn't have last time.
And another upside to having a sort of focus group is we often see big groups of people come out to the town halls, but a focus group sends individual emails requesting to meet, so it can get a different subset of our Seward population of ratepayers that may not necessarily have the night free to go out to the town hall meeting, or may not necessarily be comfortable going to one of those or physically able. So kind of spreading out the information a little bit as well.
But I'm not sure where we're going further on this. Sounds like you're getting into advanced metering infrastructure, but in terms of the next couple of meetings, I think you said there were 2 more and then a recap for the 3 as a final.
Yeah, total.
Yeah. So how do we what's your strategy on that? For instance, I mean, just my little diving into your world, it's a big world. You know, I mean, are we getting into Cook Inlet? Are we getting into the rail belt? Are we getting into, you know, because a lot of those do influence our decision as a town. So,
I think my thinking on it was, you really have three options. If you're going to maintain the utility as a municipal utility, you really have to kind of change the way you've been doing, the way you've done business for the last 30 years. And there are some municipal utilities that are successful, Sitka, Ketchikan, and they're municipal electric utilities. And there's ways to do that. I know that, for example, in the municipality of Anchorage in the 80s set up municipal corporations for Anchorage Telephone Utility and Anchorage Water and Wastewater Utility. So they sort of sat outside of city government and were their own entity. If you were going to say stay municipal, I would suspect that would be the way you would go, as opposed to being a department of the city per se. So we'd like that, so let me back up. I should have gone with the co-ops first. The next meeting, we're thinking, let's have the CEOs of the co-ops that are interested, would be interested in purchasing sewer, do 15 minutes like the other co-op leaders did, and kind of give you a feeling where they think sewer goes in their business model. And then after that, we'll bring in the municipals and we'll try to do something similar. And now we will have had a town hall on the three possibilities you have. Forming your own co-op, selling to one of the others, or stay in a municipality. And then we'll try to wrap that up in the final meeting. And then I think everybody hopefully at that point, everybody understands what your alternatives are.
Yeah.
And then we have to come together and ascertain what we believe the temperature of the community is and what the willingness is to move in whatever direction the community wants to move in. That's the end goal for us, I think.
and then, sorry, just to dig down a little bit, so then that end goal is you ascertaining what you feel like the community's going to do, and then at that point, do we as a council or a city make a decision, and then it goes to vote, or how does that play out?
Depending on what the solution is. So it would be more, and rather than a you, it would be a we as a collective. So we would have, yeah, it would be, so throughout this whole process, like we're coming back now saying, here's how the first one went, here's how the second, here's how the third, having these conversations so that when we get to that final meeting, there's a good understanding, and I feel like we have a choice and a decision to move forward with that we know if we brought it to vote, it would be an easy vote, hopefully, knock on wood. So if it did need to vote.
And I also think that it would be out in the open is what we're trying to say. We're trying to make this transparent as possible. Everything would be above board and everybody would hear it, and we shouldn't have to hear from people they didn't know because we didn't give them an opportunity to know. This is making sure that everybody is aware and informed is what we're trying to get at.
That's exactly what we're trying to get at, so that everybody knows, here are the alternatives and here are some examples of all the alternatives. This is the universe of possibilities, and then we'll probably run another survey and see how things shake out compared to the survey we had this time. And hopefully we've moved the needle on some so people are better at, we don't have a lot of people who say, I don't have enough information. Hopefully we've checked that box, and then it's really a matter of what you all want to do with your utility. You know?
And then you all is, obviously, we're going to try to somehow integrate all of the ratepayers in that decision.
You know, I don't know how that works. I mean, I know that you can't have the folks outside the city voting on the disposition of city assets, so I think that's a discussion we have to have, how that all plays out.
Okay. Thanks.
You know, we don't have all the answers. I certainly don't mean to say we have all the answers here, but I think what we're trying to do is get all the information out, and then we have to come back together and have a discussion and see where we're at.
Yeah.
Other questions? Okay, go ahead, and then we'll get the audience to, we've got another hour plus.
All right, so I wanted to provide a advanced metering infrastructure update. And so about a year ago, I started the process to create an RFP, or actually we kind of did an economic analysis before the RFP went out, but to look at upgrading our meters. So as everyone in Seward is well aware of at this point, we got free meters from Kodiak in 2018. And so when Seward got them for free, they were about 15 years old. Life of meters, about 20 years. The other issue we're running into is the field collection service that we have for these meters it's going to sunset in 2028. So we got a couple more years where we can drive around, read the meters that we have. But, they're aged, they're fully depreciated right now, especially since they were free for Seward. And so we put the request for proposal together, working with Utilisys, a completely different branch of Utilisys than we used for the billing. And they helped me come up with 272 evaluation criteria to score each RFP with, which at the time they were asking me about each line item if it was a good idea, and I'm like, yeah, I like that one, we should do that. And then I actually had to grade these, and it was about 6.5 hours per RFP. But anyway, so we have 3 manufacturers that are currently under evaluation: Landis & Gyr, Itron, and Eau Clara. Each one has some pros and cons. So we filled out all the evaluations that excluded the price from each one. And so I completed that last week, and then we're actually meeting tomorrow to go over our evaluation scores for each brand. And then on Wednesday, we have another meeting where they're going to introduce the costs so that we have kind of an unbiased view of which, meter brand is going to suit our needs the best. But, by coming in here, I want to clear up some of the questions that I've been receiving. There's a lot of people that think, the meters are going to be radiating, they've got 5G and all these things. Well, the big plus is they have the two-way communication. What, some people are a little concerned with is that we already have RF communication coming from our AMR meters, and we just read it, once a month, but it sends a signal all month. But the new ones will have the same RF signal, so there's no 5G or cellular signal coming off it, even though that's an option that a lot of the larger cities have gone to. I kept it with the RF for the backhaul because it has a longer range and it cuts through the trees a lot better than the cellular signal. And then it'll basically, the new ones would go back to a collector unit, which then has a fiber backhaul, so there's not even cellular backhaul from the collectors. So we went with the simpler system, keeping the same RF range at about 420 megahertz that we have right now coming off the current meters. But anyway, some key facts about AMI metering. The two-way communication, we can get constant flow of data. The automated readings, so instead of having Blake drive around once a month for 2 days to collect the meter readings, we just hit a button on the computer, all the data comes to us, so it saves us time, where then we can focus that time on other things to help people save money on their bills. Real-time data, so I think this is a big one. We've gotten lots of complaints about people that don't understand their electric bill and their usage, and in the meantime, we've purchased this device called a Boomerang, which I can put behind the meter on anyone's house, and it actually uses cellular signal to send back the data of whatever's being used in the house. And there's people that had pretty high use, and they didn't know that the heat pumps and their EV and their hot tub, and she's gone tonight, but anyway, that used all that power. And so anyway, I just want everyone to be able to look on their phone and see their usage in pretty close to nearly real time. It basically, what we've spec'd out is kind of, we don't want to go over the board with the cost, but it's a 5-minute interval data that comes back in once an hour. So every time you check your phone, you get a data dump every hour, and then that's kind of what you're using.
And will all 3 vendors you'll be able to disconnect and connect remotely on all 3 types?
Yeah, so that's another cool thing I found out about. So, we have 7 people that are out of power. I know there's some rumors going around that we had 63 people out, but there are 7 people in the community that haven't paid their bill and are still out of power after our disconnects, which we don't like. But you can remote disconnect the meters and remotely reconnect them, and then if people have a hard time paying their bill, all 3 of the manufacturers have a prepaid program. So it's like getting your Cricket phone at Walmart. You can just go onto your site and put $100 on, and we can turn your meter back on, and you can use $100, and then your meter turns back off once you're out of money on your account. So that was like a cool feature I didn't even know existed until we started the RFP process. But the benefits to the customer, you can see the detailed reports helping understand your consumption habits and potentially lower your bills by adjusting your energy use. And then the utility I used to work for in North Dakota just went to a time of use pricing. And so basically from, it's 7 in the morning to 9 in the morning, and then 5 at night to 8 at night, it's 23 cents a kilowatt hour. And then all the other times are considered off-peak, and it's 5 cents a kilowatt hour. So if you're doing laundry and stuff, they can choose to do their laundry at the cheaper times of the day. This would benefit us because we pay a hefty demand to Chugach, and if we can lower that demand, then it's saving the utility money. So that's a potential, benefit we could have from the smart meters. And then the benefits to the utility: eliminates the cost and labor associated with manual meter reading, provides data to improve operational efficiency, manage power quality, and detect tampering, and then enables faster detection and response to power outages and voltage problems. And everywhere else I've worked, we've had the AMIs, and you get basically alarms on the software from the backhaul, and so if someone's having high or low voltage, it'll send an alarm in. Whenever there's power outages, you can just look at the map and it shows every meter that's out of power. And you can even set them so if someone has a half power, then you see like basically one of their legs went out. And so they might still have lights on in their house, but like their stove won't work or a furnace or something, and you can get those, but we won't respond to those in the middle of the night. So I guess what I'm most excited about is the different analytics that we can get from these meters. And it's not, we're not spying on individual houses or anything like that. So I set each one of the RFPs up so that we can't actually see what's running in someone's house. Now, one of the manufacturers, the consumer can actually sign up for like a $20 a month plan, and then they'll basically set the meter, and you can connect it to your Wi-Fi, and you can see whatever's going on in your house if you're really concerned about that kind of stuff. But I made sure to protect everyone's privacy in the community. But on a larger scale, we can see all of the usage and how we use power in the community. So with this GridX program that we can run, they've got a design platform, so it's the ability to design pricing strategies that deliver cost-effective pricing. They analyze it for running billing quality analytics for every customer. They've got the Empower to communicate highly accurate cost data through APIs. Advise, get the most strategic business customers on the right rate, and then calculate and enhance your existing CIS to bill complex rates and programs. So we basically can have all the data coming in from the AMIs for all of our different customer classes and run rate studies in real time to figure out, making sure that every rate class is fair and equitable with each other. And then you can even put it in a study mode. So like, let's say we want to bust out a heat pump rate or an EV rate, time of use rate. You can run these studies in GridX to make sure that you're capitalizing on the revenue you need to run the business, but also keep the rates as low as possible for all of your different rate classes to make it so it's economically viable to run a business or live in this town. Any questions on the metering?
Yeah. If a person absolutely refuses to get the new meter, can they just keep the old one? Or what are you going to do about that?
What we've done in the past is kind of eased into that. I would say when we went to AMRs at Chugach, when we went from AMRs to AMIs, we had folks who did not want to have meters because of concerns about electric EMF or things like that. We sort of eased into it, but at some point in time, you have to stop sending meter readers out, or somebody's got to pay for them.
Okay.
And at the end of the day, it goes, you guys want to pay for a meter reader for the 5 people who don't want them? That at the end of you end up at that point at some point in time, and that's just really where you're at. You can't keep both of them going indefinitely.
Right, that was my big
Yeah.
question.
So I did look at some other utility policies, and I couldn't find one in Alaska, but in the lower 48, they've got a program where you can have an old dial meter on the side of your house, but then you have to just pay the person's time to go read it. And so we could probably put an opt-out program together like that, but I was researching where to buy dial meters, and I ended up on eBay. So like, I have to just make sure the calibration's good and everything, but it's just a lot of the concern I've been hearing is just not being transparent on your bill and the rates and everything like that. And we're trying to move to this new technology. Well, mainly because our current technology is timing out, but because we want to have people completely understand their bill and be transparent. So, I mean, if people want to like opt out, and if we did find a way to do the old dial meters, you'd have to trust us to make that read. You know?
And there are state statutes around metering, right, because it's an economic, I can't remember, there's a division of the state of Alaska that requires you to test those meters on a regular basis, and when you put them in service and take them out of service. But that means we have to have someone who can test them, or know someone, some contractor that you can have test them. So on the utility side, that's expensive, and the folks who have them would have to pay that. It becomes one of those conditions.
So, I can't remember what those meters cost, and then how do we get that money back? I mean, for instance, if they cost $2 million, how is that money well spent in terms of retrieving that money? By getting that analytics, does that help us become more efficient, and therefore ultimately over time that will pay?
Well, metering is probably the main cost of running a utility that you can never get away from. So we'll basically, purchase the meters and then amortize them over the life of the meters, probably, 20 years. And so it'll be a cost that we incur on the expense side for every year for that 20 years. And then in 20 years, we'll have to start replacing the meters again. So it's kind of a never-ending cost.
I understand that part, but by having meters, aren't you becoming more efficient in that efficiency there? By ultimately you have less manpower, you're earning that money back over time also. Would that be true?
Yeah, or some portion of it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, those are the kind of things that are hard
Right.
to quantify, but you do have crews that were out doing stuff about meters. We'll be actually putting in lines to keep the lights on, or doing system improvements or capital work. So it frees up manpower in a number of areas, both in the field and in the office. And it allows us to do smarter things, which will hopefully provide, for example, if we can introduce a time of use rate, which would allow us to shave our peak with Chugach. If we're not 8 megawatts and we're 6 megawatts, that's real money.
Yeah.
Which is our current peak's about 8, and it's in August, so we'd be looking at doing that. So it gives you the ability to do that, and so, yeah.
Does it dial into line loss or not? Will that diminish line loss?
No.
Okay.
Well, other than it might, in a very incremental way, because you weren't using power at the peak, right, your losses would be low.
I guess I'm not line loss, sorry. I remember on the last sale, we had this discussion of some of our ratepayers weren't paying the appropriate amount, or their meters weren't reflecting necessarily.
It could be I've heard about power factor metering. Maybe that's what you're speaking of. I'm not sure.
Well, and we have a lot of screens that burn out, and so then you have to estimate the bill. And so, there's, probably about 5 meters that, you replace the meter, the screen burns out again, and we've basically troubleshot everything on the service and can't really figure out why that's happening. But there are certain customers that get an estimate bill, so that's not an accurate way of billing. So this would fix that. And these, if you do have trees in the line and whatnot, they measure impedance, and so one of the flags that'll come in on your program is if there's a tree on the line or something. But you have a lot more data points that are coming in, so you can kind of help troubleshoot what the problems are.
And what are the prices of these meters?
So I don't know that yet, but just before we went into the RFP process, I'm finding that out on Wednesday, but the range was about 120. These are 2S meters for resident. The lower end was 120 and the high end was 180.
Okay, so we have how many?
So on the next slide, we're breaking out budget assumptions, and we're assuming 1.2 million for the AMI meter replacement.
Okay. Just trying to.
Yeah, no, of course.
Okay, go ahead.
Great.
Sure. So we'll do a little update on the infrastructure project. We don't have a lot of slides, but I kind of have a status of where we are today. If you recall, in the first column on the left there describes the functional projects, and you'll see the AMI project is at the bottom. And if you'll recall, in 2022, there was no AMI project in the infrastructure. We added that earlier this year, or during the budget process, earlier this year. But as you can see, starting at the top, Nash Road is complete. Nash Road Phase 1 is complete, and came in slightly under budget. Nash Road Phase 2, our original estimate was 1.285. We revised that estimate because we had to go with increased pole heights to do some work that had been overlooked in the very beginning. That raised the estimate to 2.4 million, and we got our bids back and selected the lowest qualified bidder, and the price on that is going to be 2.2 million. So Nash Road Phase 2 is down 247,000. The Seward Highway section and the Fort Raymond section are complete. And that was reframing, the Seward Highway section was reframing the structures from the junction of the 115 line coming from Lawing into Fort Raymond. And then the Fort Raymond substation itself came in slightly under budget. It was 7.1 was the estimate. It came in about 6.7 million. And then Lawing substation, our 2022 estimate was 3.9 million. We revised that in February to 4.3, and then we got our bids in for Lawing. We revised it to 3.5. We got our bids in, and it's at 5.2 million. Spring Creek, we had it originally at 3.9. In February, we revised that to 4.5. It came in at 5.4, so those are both over. And then on the shore power project, the 1.4 million that we were going to contribute to that, the 10% match on the $45 million grant, that's going to be contributed by Royal Caribbean, and so that's off the books. At the end of the day, in February, we came in and said, we were going to require 8.7 million in additional funding. It looks like we need about 11.2 million today, and that doesn't include if the AMI project were to come in high or low. And we had hoped to have that data tonight, but we just aren't going to get to it. We just couldn't get all the evaluations done in time for this meeting, so we'll be coming back to you with the actuals on the AMI. But right now, without the actual data from the AMI, we're at about 11.2 million for the completing the infrastructure project, including the AMI is, the 1.2 million for the AMI is included in that number. But if it were more than that, that wouldn't be included in that number. So we're still operating off of that budgetary estimate that we got.
Could also be less.
It could be less too, yeah, absolutely.
We'll find out on
Try not to
Wednesday.
be so dark. We did come in under on a few, so that's kind of where we are on the infrastructure projects. The majority of the construction on these and the cost will start rolling in September of 26, that is. So 9/1/26 is when we're going to be in procurement on Spring Creek and Lawing up until that point. Nash Road Phase 2 is going to kick off for construction here January, so they're going to get after it right away. But the two substation projects will be later.
Yeah. I think this is a really exciting time because it's the first time since the original estimate in 2022 that we have either fully complete parts of the project or 100% design bid package and RFP. So this is after 3+ years, the most realistic and precise estimate since we have bids received for all of those.
Yeah.
So this is as close to the final project number as we can get to without the final project number being, with the project being complete. With that being said, though, we came to you in February and discussed the bond package that we were going to bring forward. And you passed a resolution that said that we were able to repay ourselves with up to $8.749 million if we received a bond later on. And so going back to the previous discussion and talking about how we're having all these conversations throughout about the electric utility, those three options that we see, from an administrative and electric utility standpoint, we kind of see it as a bad time to also take on $11 million of debt. So as we work through the next few numbers and looking at the AMI, getting numbers back from that, we anticipate bringing back another request that is a little bit more specific and might include some more creative funding utilizing city resources that we already have, whether it be an internal loan, a line of credit, or things along that, so that we can get to, say, after those 4 or 3 more meetings in the town halls, and have a better idea of what the future and what the community wants for our electric utility before we then go forward and get an $11+ million bond. So we anticipate being able to do that funding through to the big costs in September in some way, shape, or form. But we wanted to be upfront about kind of what we were talking about in the back end of what that funding of that remainder $11 million looks like. It is 2.5 more than what we discussed in February, which is a big additional chunk of change. And as we look at that down the line, definitely something to consider and talk about being a little bit more creative with those funding packages. Anything to add, Brian?
No, I mean, I think that's the thinking is, between now and when projects kick off and the big money starts flowing out, we'll have things will be a lot more clear as to what the community wants to do with the utility, and that'll help us decide, I think, at that time what we want to do with as how we fund these projects going forward basis. Recognizing that, everything on there except the AMI has to be complete by 2028 in order to meet the shore power turn-up date and get the $45 million from the EPA.
Yeah.
So we can't kick this down the road indefinitely.
Right.
There's a certain, there's a lot of procurement going on. We have bought the 2 long lead items for Spring Creek and Lawing. The substation transformers were already purchased. So we have those in stock, here on the property, so. But yeah, that's sort of the thinking is, things should be a lot more clear in a few months. And
Yeah.
maybe we wanted to,
Okay. Do you have more?
I got one more.
This
This is what Taylor guys were out doing, was it last night?
Well, we have a question here.
That's Thursday.
by the way.
Yeah. This is not how you want to see your transmission line look.
Yes.
No, that's a rough one.
Imagine getting that text message from your operations manager, like, what am I looking at? But yes, Bob, question.
Question. Can you go back a slide?
Yeah.
Please, sorry. Why did we underestimate by $2.5 million on Lawing and Spring Creek? Can you explain how that happened?
I would say they're parametric estimates, right? They're dollar per square foot for, so they're plus or minus, what normally a parametric is a class 4 estimate, so it's usually minus 20 plus 30%. When you do an estimate, it's of parametric nature. It's not a bottom-up, line-by-line detailed estimate. We don't have the detailed designs done, or didn't at that time. And so you're sort of within that framework.
But aren't they all a certain amount of transformers? I mean, basically the same equipment per station, isn't that true? Or
But the 2 are very different stations, actually, Lawing and Spring Creek, but most substations have there are similarities to them, like ground grid and fencing and those types of things. But I think what you find right now is there's just a lot of variability in pricing with the supply chain stuff that happened, and then you've got we have a shortage of contractors in the state right now, and so it depends if there's a big job going somewhere, and we can't get enough folks, and how hungry the contractors are. That's kind of where you end up. But it was based on parametric historical information that we got from the engineers. We don't have that kind of data ourselves, but yeah, so that's.
So, and the other question, you might be getting to that, but you alluded to the fact that 115 is essential for shore power.
Yep.
Are you going to get into why 115 is more than just shore power? It's been more important for us to be 115,
Sure.
Or not, or is that?
No,
is that just a luxury item that we're?
No, it's not a luxury. So the pole replacements were due because the poles were worn out and broken. And it only costs about 5% more to put in 115 than 69. 69 kV is a voltage that is not used very often in the industry anymore. The industry has moved away from that, so people don't build 69 these days. It's kind of a voltage from the 40s and 50s. Because of where it sits on the scale, it's per kV, I'm not sure how to describe it, per dollar per kV, it doesn't move as much energy. So what you're capable of doing is moving more energy with 115. And the cost of doing it incrementally, if you're putting the poles in anyway, of making the insulator a little longer is almost, it's about 5%. I know one time when I was at Chugach, I did an estimate. We had a 115 line running down Northern Lights Boulevard where I had them estimated at 230 and estimated, and it should have been 115, but I wanted a 230 corridor out of town. And they said, well, we can't put 230 there. I said, well, estimate the job both ways, and let's get some budgetary quotes from contractors on what is the 115 tower versus a 230 tower, and that was about 10% was the incremental cost on doing that. A similar analysis going 69 to 115 would get you about half of that probably.
So basically what you're saying is that all these substations were in need of replacement or repair?
Yeah, the replacement was going to happen anyway. The question is, do you go back with old technology or go to a more modern voltage that transmits more power at the end of the day at lower losses?
So we couldn't have gone for another 15 years with the old 69? I just want to be clear.
To be clear, you could not have gone another 15 years. That was not.
That's kind of like the poles falling.
Yeah, that was not in the cards. So you were going to go through and do this, and in the southern rail belt, I think the only 69 kV line left is the one from Cooper Lake into Quartz Creek. The one that used to go from Quartz to Soldotna is gone, and that was the only 69. Oh no, the one from Bernice Lake to Soldotna is gone. They've converted that to 115. So when you go in and do pole replacements due to age, you go up to the 115 class.
Other questions? Okay.
Oh, nope, other than...
Yeah?
Questions?
Do you want to open it?
I want to get the audience too. Oh, you're done? Okay. Let me ask if anybody has questions from out there. There's a whole bunch of you. Yeah, Lori, go ahead.
I want to know how the new meters will work with people with solar panels. Will it be completely automatic like the rest?
Yep, like this net metering. So right now we have to put a specific meter called a net meter in at your house if you got a solar panel. So it'll work the same. You can see, the power that's flowing both ways on it, just bi-directional.
Yeah, look, go ahead.
You mentioned about turning on or off your power depending on your billing desires. How does that affect the potential, like, blow-ups of appliances or computers that often occurs when you have power that goes off and on?
So for liability, a lot of the companies have come out with a button. So let's say you call and you pay your bill, and we basically, turn your meter on remotely from our end. There's actually a physical button that's available on the meters where you have to say, yep, I've cleared everything in my house, now I'm going to walk outside and I'm taking liability for anything inside my house by pushing this button. And then, so if you have a pizza box or something on top of your stove, then it's not going to come back on the utility. But we don't check inside your house right now either,
But when you turn it off and then back on, the idea is to have everything shut down. There's a process when you're bringing your power back on, right, in your home.
So if we go pull your power right now, if you didn't pay your bill,
Yeah.
and you're not necessarily home,
Yeah.
it's the same setup as if we turn it back on with the AMI. Like, we're not gonna go in your house and do a walkthrough, before we turn your power back on.
Yeah, I just know when we had blackouts and brownouts, some people were losing appliances and this and that.
Generally, when your lights are turned on and off in your house, if everything's functioning correctly, it shouldn't have any effect on the equipment there. If we have a system problem where we have a voltage spike, because something happened on the grid, on the transmission
that's
grid,
different.
then
Yeah, it's different.
that's a different thing. Or if you lose one leg of your service, then the voltage on the other two legs goes high. You can burn up, then you have 240 volts to ground instead of 120, and everything's at double voltage, and you can burn stuff up. But normal switching should not affect the stuff inside your house. But sometimes on the system, if we have a high voltage problem, it hits everybody, and if you have stuff that doesn't have the correct metal oxide varistors, I can't remember what the name of them. Surge protectors. Surge protectors. If you don't have those on, then, yeah, you can, and it's sensitive, it can burn it up, but just typical switching shouldn't be doing that to you. Just make sure we're clear.
Good question. Yeah, Kevin.
Comment on the 69 to 115 upgrade. If Seward was going to stay without the shore power for the cruise ships, 69 kV would have been fine, because 10 megawatts is Seward's load. That's negligible on a 69 system. But if we're going to 30 megawatts with 2 cruise ships plugged in, then it would pay for itself. Awesome.
That was
And
part
it's
of
a
the-
60-year investment, right? We're 8 megawatts or 10 megawatts today. If they put a Coast Guard base in here, we could be 50 megawatts. You know, so it's an investment you make over,
Yeah,
you know, the impact
69
will be
kV would not do
50
50 megawatts.
Not 50 megawatts, yeah. And the cost is really incrementally pretty small when you're doing all the other things.
Anyone else? Yeah, Rhonda. Rhonda, go ahead.
I just wanted to make a comment that I'm glad that administration is rethinking the bond that was considered in February, because the way it was explained to me, that there certainly is a better way of financing if you go like the co-op route versus going with the traditional utility department owned by the city. And so I'm just really glad that you're rethinking that. It just wouldn't be smart to go out on the bonding package right at this point. So thank you for being smart about that.
Phil?
Oh, I guess regarding the meters, you know, if we decided to sell to one of the other utilities, they're using one type of meter, this is a different type of meter. Is that an issue? Is that something we should resolve before we jump on a meter technology?
I don't think so on a regional basis. You know, I mean, at Chugas, for example, at one point, I think we had Turtles over at Tyonik, and we had the AMRs, and then on the municipal, on the MLP side, they had a different set of meters. I don't, you know, right now, MLP at Chugas has 2.
I assume it's 3 different sets of software and stuff that.
You just gotta know what's where and all that stuff, but yeah, it's not it'll be a modern technology, so. I think, and more modern technologies are much more plug and play than the old ones.
When we were choosing which, meter brands to send the RFP out to, we chose Landis & Gear, Itron, and Eau Clara because they're used on the rail belt. So if we need some support from someone that has a meter department, then we can reach out to someone that can drive down and help us out. So we skipped Eaton, Honeywell, and a couple others that no one was using on the rail belt.
Cool. Anyone else out there?
I can't see, I'm not sure if I see.
Oh, Rhonda, go ahead.
Sorry, I don't mean to dominate, but I'm really curious, I'm really happy that we are kind of going a little bit more an integrated process with the town halls and the focus groups. I really felt that we were shortchanged with information the last time we went through this exercise, and there was a lot of bitterness, and there's a lot of bitterness too, just seeing the cost overruns too. It's really frustrating. I'm sorry, I know you guys assumed this, but I think it just goes to show you that we need to have, it's really hard as just lay people to get your arms wrapped around this, and so we need as much professional help through this, and also what we did the first meeting with people come in, but I always forget what I was saying, but with that said, I was just, I just want to encourage that we could, I know what I was going to say about having the other users being involved. I know that is a big thing, and you've read that on the surveys. I'm just wondering if there's any possibility, maybe we could talk to, I don't know if we could do like a mock vote or something to include these other users, just see what they really would like to see too, because when this comes to a vote, I don't mean it to be to trump any, voter integrity or anything, but I just really would like to see and understand what the other ratepayers outside city limits that don't have the final voice on what may be decided in the future. Just really would like to see where they're at and what they would like as well.
We had talked about that the last time.
Yeah, well, I think the underlying but unfortunate aspect that Brian said earlier is that a person who is not a voter inside the city of Seward limits cannot vote on the disbursement of assets. But there are other ways to do, or to gauge interest and gauge opinions, and that, I think, is part of the driving force behind a lot of the discussions that we're having, a lot of the town hall surveys that we'll be sending out. And if after a few of those town halls we identify a good path forward to hear those voices and to access those opinions, we'll definitely move forward with that, because it's important for our community as a whole, not just inside and outside the city limits. We're all ratepayers, so.
Yeah, it is unfortunate. I mean, the one thing about it is that but that's not, doesn't mean that's the answer. It
Yeah.
just means, that is one of the challenges we've wrestled with it, got legal opinions, kind of trying to figure out how can we do it, but we are where we are, so.
I believe Cody calls it an advisory vote.
Yeah. An advisory vote.
Bob, did you have?
Well, just a kind of incidental question, but Cordova last week at that presentation had buried their lines, and I was just thinking of like that mile 20 mess last year. What was it? Twice the price to bury your lines? I know they have much less trout, they have much less distance, much less lineage, I'm sure. But can you just comment on that, or are there areas that might be worthwhile to do that?
I'd want to go back and look at it. I mean, I did an analysis for MLMP many years ago when I worked there. And I think, burying them from a capital cost perspective is like 4 times more than overhead. But what you have to factor in is and you have to factor in the wintertime, if the ground's frozen, you have to thaw it to get to it. That being said, the outage, if it's properly installed and good quality equipment that you put in, the outages are far less. So it's kind of a bit of a trade-off there. But I think we've talked, the three of us have talked quite a bit about, that's probably a good answer for Seward. As we're moving through, you've got in the downtown area some very old, some of these poles were trees that they cut down. They called them standing stock back in the days. Those are not power poles that came off a lathe out there. You can see they have knots and stuff in them. And so some of that stuff, as we bring that down, I would move towards undergrounding that stuff, because you have a lot less outages, less maintenance. You don't have to worry about trees. You don't have to worry about people running into it with boats and other things like that. But it is more expensive on the front end. It's a lot like hydro. You love it once you've got it, but getting there costs money.
I just want to clarify too, so Cordova's 100% distribution lines, and so they were able to, underground everything, but the problems that we had last winter were with the transmission lines. And so we can't really underground, we could underground it, but it costs probably
that is very, very expensive.
Yeah.
To underground transmission.
$1,000 per foot per wire.
Yeah.
Did you have a question, Kevin, or?
No, I was
That was
just
what you were
gonna
just
bring
gonna say?
that
Okay.
up. You're still gonna see the transmission line because it costs so much to bury high voltage.
We're not burying that. We would not bury that.
It does.
And in Cordova, they actually have overhead transmission going out to
the creek.
Out to what you call a creek.
25 kV.
Well, I mean, it's what their transmission.
Yeah, they call it transmission.
Yeah, they call it transmission, but we call it distribution here, but yeah.
It does take longer, though, to repair in the winter. We had that a few years, quite a few years ago now in my neighborhood. And the thawing process, you're without power in a localized area a lot longer with the buried, of course. But did you have another? Really? No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, Rhonda.
I was wondering if you could explain, and it doesn't have to be tonight, or I was thinking in the future about how our harbor is handled in delivering our product of the electricity, because right now it's brokered on top of a brokerage fee. And so how will those payers be treated in the case of in a co-op and/or a sale situation versus the way it is now? So if you could include that prospect or that information as well, because it seems to be
So we actually just started kind of toying with that conversation a little bit with the harbor master, and realizing that that's definitely a discussion we'll have to have if one of those two options become the choice in the future. But good reminder, we will discuss.
Isn't it like double rate? in the harbor? or
It's not
something?
necessarily double, but you're, you know, we're paying two extra brokerage fee. and
Yeah.
Charges on top of that, and then Seward's charging the harbor an extra charge, so they're.
The harbor as an enterprise fund functions as their own distributor of electricity, so they do all the reads and everything down there. It's like its own little electric utility within a harbor department.
Fiefdom.
Oh, yes, Tony's fiefdom, he calls it.
So after hiring our utility cashier that came from the harbor, right now, like the way it is, like not having the harbor do it would be a nightmare for us because of all the transient boats that move. So someone has to take a meter reading every time they move a boat to a new slip, and but maybe in the future with the AMIs and everything, that could be automated. And so I think the upcharge is for the extra time that the harbor employees have to take when you're moving boats around and stuff all the time and transferring meters and.
Yep.
I mean, they probably do more meter reading than we do.
They most definitely do. But very good point to bring that into the conversation.
Anything else out there? It's useful.
Is that the end of the question? Or end of the presentation?
That's the end of the
That's the end of the presentation.
This is the question part now, see?
Was there anything else you wanted to?
No.
Anything else you want to grill Taylor on?
I do.
Great.
Well, he did mention differential equations the other day. Sparked a discussion at our family dinner about how many of us have ever used differential equations since we took that. Only the engineer in the family ever had, so.
Nice.
Go ahead.
Taylor, can you speak to Mount Marathon and what's going on
Oh,
there?
yeah,
thanks.
hydro.
Yeah, so we started some dirt work. So James has been up there brushing it out, and we're regrading some of those washed out spots. We ran into a lot more organics than we thought we were gonna get into. I was honestly thinking it was gonna be gravel all the way down, but so anyway, kind of, if you remember right, you do the first 3 switchbacks, then there's like a straightaway, and there's always like 2 muddy spots. And so we're gonna drop some culverts in there so that the water flows under the trail rather than having a mud pit. And then, I can't remember how many more switchbacks it is. There's a corner next to the lower race trail that always washes out, and it was like 3 feet deep a little while back. So we're coming up with a way to put a few drains on the side of that, so the water, kind of when it hits it, instead of running down the trail, kind of goes off to the side. And we're working on bringing some D1 up. So we got a track rig lined up to haul the D1 up, and then we'll do a final grade and try to pack it down pretty good. Then, once we're to that point, the permit should be back for mucking out the reservoir. So we're not gonna do a ton of work this fall, but just enough to get the intake manifold off and put a blind on. So then we can work down the powerhouse over the winter. It's just kind of like a side project, so it's not, we're not gonna put all of our resources into it, but whenever there's a day where we don't have anything else to do, we'll go down and pull a valve and recycle the valves, and then we're gonna pull the Pelton turbine off, go through it. And then once we're back to, spring next year, we'll be able to put the intake manifold back on, finish mucking out the reservoir. There's a sluice gate on the bottom that we need to pull off and get operational again. And once we get all the valves fixed, go through the Pelton turbine, I'm hoping to find some used switch gear, so we're trying to do this project on the cheap. And then we have to flush out a gearbox and just clean up the 250 kW generator, and then our plan is to turn it on and, show the community that we can make a little power out of something that's been sitting here.
So cool.
Yeah.
McCracken.
I was employed when it was built, both for the dam and the powerhouse. Randy Atkinson, I don't know her name now, she was the city inspector on the job at the time. She probably has considerable information.
Great.
I know we did all the forms of concrete work, both on the turbine, building, and the dam. It was
You guys need-
birds involved with the dam.
Well, fortunately, we've also run into John Uriarty and Bob Linville, and then we got basically every document from when the place was built. Someone took a picture on every step and so I had all that stuff digitized in Anchorage, so we basically have a manual of, how it was built and every single spec to every part we have, so we really lucked out because there was great record keeping back in 1981. And yeah, so this is just kind of something we're working on. It's like one of our, favorite jobs to work on, because just getting it running again, it's pretty exciting to all of us. And it won't make a ton of power, but in the future, there's a chance that if we remove the gear drive and found a new to us 600 kW Kato generator, then we might be able to produce more with it. But we just kind of want to get it running again, prove it, make sure that, we can get it running, and then at that point, we can see if we want to invest more into it or not, or just leave it the way it is.
So the turbine is down by the tank, water tank?
Yep. Yeah. So at the base of the race trail, you just pass the base of the race trail, and it's a little gray building on the left on Lowell Creek. And we'll probably put a community tour together when we start working on it. So if anyone from the community wants to come check it out, we can just host a tour.
Instead of always just wondering what that building is, for years. But a big thank you to everybody in the hiking community who understood that on like the 2 to 3 sunny days we had, that the G Trail was closed. I was lamenting it myself briefly, but it is exciting that because of this work, some of those big trenches will be filled in and the trail will be in better condition than it was, so. Yeah.
The downhill biking community will really appreciate it when it's done. So.
I don't understand how they do that.
Then maybe we can get to some of the other hydro projects.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Anything else? Okay, well, thank you. It's very exciting.
Thank everybody for coming.
I appreciate the dialogues and the continued town halls. We'll keep people engaged and sort this thing out, so. Okay, well, we've got a bit of time before our 7 o'clock meeting, so nothing else. I will close the work session. You can hang out.